Snow drifted across the narrow mountain highway in soft, swirling sheets as Evelyn Carter parked her dark blue Jeep on the shoulder, her headlights slicing through the growing storm that had swallowed the Colorado wilderness. She was returning from a leadership seminar in Denver, her mind still buzzing with numbers, deadlines, and corporate obligations when something strange caught her eye, something small, unmoving and shockingly out of place along the snowy bend ahead. Her breath formed a ghostly cloud as she stepped out into the biting cold, the wind gnawing at her face while she trudged through the thick snow. The deeper she moved away from the Jeep, the clearer the shadowy shape became. A little boy, no older than 7, curled up beside a half-buried rock, shivering violently, his face streaked with frozen tears. Evelyn felt her heart drop to her stomach. She rushed forward, kneeling in the snow as she gently touched his shoulder. The boy flinched at first, then slowly opened his red, frightened eyes. "Please, help my mom," he whispered in a trembling voice that nearly broke apart in the air. "She fell. I couldn't wake her up." Evelyn swallowed hard, a chill running deeper than the winter cold. The little boy, who introduced himself as Mason through chattering teeth, pointed down a narrow slope leading into the dense woods. Without wasting a second, Evelyn removed her insulated coat and wrapped it around him, ignoring how the cold immediately sank its claws into her arms. She lifted him into her embrace, his small hands gripping her sweater desperately, then she followed the direction he had indicated. The slope was steep, the snow thick enough to slow her steps, but she forced herself downward with careful urgency. Branches scraped her shoulders, ice cracked beneath her boots, and wind roared between the trees like a wild warning. After several slow, agonizing minutes, Evelyn spotted a faint movement in the whiteness. A woman collapsed near a fallen log, snow covering her like a thin burial blanket. Evelyn's heart leapt to her throat. She hurried forward and gently set Mason down beside her as she knelt next to the unconscious woman. Mason tugged at her sleeve, crying softly, "That's my mom. That's my mom." His voice held both fear and hope, clinging to Evelyn like a plea she couldn't ignore. The woman, who appeared in her mid-30s, was dangerously pale, her hands stiff, her breathing shallow. Evelyn pressed 2 fingers to her neck and exhaled in shaky relief when she felt a faint pulse. She quickly tugged off her scarf and wrapped it around the woman's chest, rubbing her arms to generate warmth. But the surrounding cold was brutal, merciless, capable of stealing life without hesitation. Evelyn knew they wouldn't survive long out in the open. She scooped Mason up once more and grabbed the woman by her wrists, dragging her across the uneven ground as snow soaked through her leggings and numbed her skin. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, and her fingers stiffened, but she refused to stop. Every step was a battle against time, and every second mattered. Mason cried quietly into her shoulder, whispering, "Please save her. Please don't let her die." Evelyn tightened her hold and whispered, "I won't, I promise." After what felt like hours but was likely only 20 grueling minutes, Evelyn finally reached the road again. She opened the Jeep door, turned the heater on full blast, and lifted the woman inside, laying her across the back seat while Mason climbed in beside her, holding his mother's frozen hand. Evelyn grabbed her phone, praying for signal. A single bar flickered weak, unstable, but enough to dial 911. Relief washed over her when the call connected. She described their location, the woman's condition, and Mason's age, her voice trembling from shock and cold. Dispatch sent an ambulance immediately. As she waited, Evelyn stayed in the back seat with Mason and his mother, rubbing their arms, checking their breathing, and whispering reassurances she hoped were true. Mason tucked his head against her side, as if instinctively recognizing that this stranger was the reason he might still have a mother tomorrow. When the paramedics finally arrived, lights flashing against the white landscape, they worked quickly, carrying the woman onto a stretcher, warming her body with heated blankets, oxygen, and medical equipment. Mason ran beside them, holding Evelyn's hand tightly as if it was the only thing keeping him steady. At the hospital, a tense, fragile silence hung in the warm waiting room. Evelyn sat with Mason, still shivering from the cold but unwilling to leave. His small fingers wrapped around hers, trusting her in a way she didn't understand but deeply felt. Hours later, A doctor approached them with gentle eyes and hopeful words. Mason's mother, whose name was Laura, was stable, recovering from severe hypothermia, dehydration, and physical exhaustion. Mason burst into tears, clutching Evelyn with all the strength his little body had. When they were finally allowed to see Laura, Mason climbed directly into her arms. Laura's weak but emotional smile filled the room, her eyes glassy with gratitude when Evelyn introduced herself. Laura learned that Evelyn had dragged her through the snow, kept Mason warm, and stayed by their side through the long, terrifying night. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I don't know how to thank you. I don't have much. But you saved my life and my son's future." Evelyn shook her head, blinking fast to hide her own tears. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. "I only did what I hoped someone would do for me." Over the next few days, Evelyn visited the hospital frequently. She brought warm meals, new gloves, and boots for Mason, and even arranged temporary lodging for them through a charitable program she'd quietly funded years ago. Laura tried to protest, but Evelyn insisted gently, saying she wasn't helping out of pity, she was helping because the world needed more moments where people looked out for each other. As the days passed, Evelyn found herself drawn to them in ways she couldn't fully explain. Mason's laughter, once barely a whisper, became loud and bright. Laura's strength returned slowly, her gratitude turning into friendship. Evelyn realized she had been living a life filled with corporate success but emotional emptiness. This unexpected encounter with a terrified boy and his brave mother had awakened something raw and warm in her heart. One morning, as snow melted into soft puddles outside the hospital entrance, Laura approached Evelyn with timid courage and said, "You saved our lives. I don't know what the future holds, but you gave us one, and we won't forget that." Mason hugged her legs tightly, asking if they would still see her once they left the hospital. Evelyn knelt, brushing his hair gently as she said, "You'll see me as long as you want to." And in that moment, she knew she meant it. Some people are brought into our lives by coincidence, others by fate. But a rare few arrive just in time to remind us what kindness truly means. Evelyn drove home that evening through the soft glow of a Colorado sunset, knowing she wasn't the same person she had been that morning. Somewhere behind her, a mother and child slept safely because she chose compassion over convenience. And somewhere inside her, a quiet but powerful belief grew stronger. The world still had good people, and she intended to keep being one of them.